So I've come to understand in my life that trust has something to do with when you trust your friend or something like that. But lately heard that these things are like something to do with the law and banking and some kind of constructive trusts. Can you explain what this means?
So, a constructive trust is usually done behind your back. It's done without your full knowledge. So, for example, if one of yous or two of yous decided to bring me into a trust without my knowledge, what you would do is you would send paperwork through my letterbox trying to claim monies or trying to offer me something or try to send me a summons or try to send me a parking ticket. And if I respond to you, what is happening is that you have now successfully constructed a trust with two of yous and with the unwary party. So the party that is being constructed around a trust is for the purposes of getting them into that trust so they can administer your affairs, albeit the unwitting party, person, man, woman, you decide what it is. So, for example, let's imagine it's a so-called credit card, and you had a dispute with the credit card company saying, hey, there's something here that doesn't make sense. So I will ask you some questions, give me the answers. If you fail to answer these questions, on a count of 3 letters or within a 30-day or 45-day period, then I've got no choice but to cease any payments that I make because these questions are not being answered. And for example, you might be concerned that you are practicing some sort of fraud because they're not answering simple questions. So you stop paying, as it were. So the credit card, what it will do is it will put that non-payment, as it were, into your credit history. And that credit history was also created as a constructive trust, because when you signed that credit card agreement, it says that you will automatically be put into the credit agency's listing, where they will grade you as to what your credit is. So that's one. So now the credit card company will send that refusal, as it were, to pay. It's not a refusal, to a solicitor. And a solicitor is there to generate the means by which to construct a trust with you. And they do that by making all sorts of accusations at you. So you will respond back to that solicitor. And when they have you responding back to that solicitor, that's called mitigation. You have opened her letter, which is an offer of contract. And because you answered back, mitigating that there is a case for her to handle, she's now got you into a corporate binding contract. It's corporate. And then she'll try to take that and pass it on to a court system. And that court system will, on the back of that, because she is an officer of the court as well, albeit a prostitute of the court, they'll try to summons you in as a corporate entity. And there the judge will try to form another trust. And that is the solicitor that originally made that corporate contract with you. And then the judge will ask you for your name, your address, and thereby linking your corporate identity to a particular commercial address, which oddly enough is not your commercial address, but just your domestic care of address, as it were. And then you will have the clerk of the court that will witness this and now say, yes, a trust has now been formed between you, the judge, and the solicitor that is supposedly representing the credit card company. Now that they trust, or a constructive trust behind your back without you knowing, has been established, they will now allocate themselves positions of trustees, administrators, executors, and make somebody else, which is usually the client of the solicitor, the credit card company, the beneficiary of that trust, or the court. And they will make you the one that pays into the trust. And you're also the settler, which means that you also created the trust by agreeing to it, albeit unknowingly. And that is called a constructive trust. They constructed something around you that you was none of the aware. You was not aware such a thing was happening before your eyes. A second example is the executive, the judiciary, and the legislator will try to form a trust around you without you knowing. So they will write to you as if they've got the God right of way to form a trust with you. So the letter will read as if it's already been established, and they're now giving you some sort of voting rights as to opposed to electoral rights. And because you've agreed to it, that the judiciary does exist, that the executor does exist, and the legislator does exist, you have now created, as the settler, as the creator of a constructive trust, which you know nothing about. You created it, and now you're going to settle it with money. That means you're going to pay into this trust for them to judicate over your own judgments, as if to say, you do not have the ability to judge. And they will now begin to legislate for you as well, which means how you should conduct yourself, usually as some sort of a corporate entity, not a man or a woman, but an entity, and that the executive will now execute the wishes of the judiciary, execute the wishes of the legislator, and because you are unaware of all of these things, they have just hoodwinked you by placing you into a trust. A religious trust, and I'm giving you a third example, how you are accidentally put into a trust is with religion. For example, if you believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and you pray to the Father, you acknowledge the Holy Ghost, and you acknowledge the Son, you have just created what's known as a settler. You have just created a trust between three entities, and that gives birth to the Catholic Church. That gives birth to the Anglican Church. That gives birth to the English Church, Church of England. That gives the creation of the Portuguese Church and the various denomination that goes under the banner of what is known as Christianity. Without you knowing, you started a trust, but you do not benefit from it until you dismiss them, until you create your own trust, or you say that you are the beneficiary. And whether you want to be or not, I don't know. But the brainwashing, another word for, shall we say, hypnotic talk, or the power of suggestion, in the case of the Catholic Church, 1001 moral blackmail, that you are subject to sin. And as a result, people begin to weaken, and without question, they create trusts. And these trusts, when you create them, are called settlers. And also you are asked to pay into the trust. And in doing so, you have just walked yourself into creating a trust and paying money into that trust.
Wow.
Wow,
Okay.
So then you mention about church. What is a church?
A church is another word for a landowner, and also another word for Lord, Lord. Another word for Lord is a landowner. Another word for landowner is also an owner of slaves, Without slaves, without land, you cannot call yourself a landlord. You cannot call yourself a lord. You have to have ownership of something. What is it that they own is what frightens people when they find out.
So, Q, can it just be a simple case of writing to whoever it is that we've now found out that a trust has been formed? We wasn't aware at the time, but we're wiser to it now. Can it just be a simple case then that we get to dictate if we wish to stay in that trust, which role we play, and then start to reverse who becomes the debtor and has to start paying the money? And can money be paid back to you for, like the role reversal as such?
Yes, of course. That is the game, as it were, that people are able to break this constructive trust. I mean, when you hear this word constructive trust, you think something that's being created. You're not aware that this is something that's being created on the back of people's ignorance. They just simply did not know that they walked themselves into a constructed lie. So let me give you an example of a constructed lie. Both of you, whoever you are, decide to make up a lie and sell that lie to me. So you've now what they call constructed something, and I'm none the wiser, and you're going to sell that lie to me. Like, for example, that I am in need, for example, of a bank account. Otherwise, I can't open a business. Well, you just constructed that. And on the back of that lie, you sold me a bank account. And in doing so, you took custody of my money because you want bail-ins or bailout. But when I give you the money, it becomes your custodial property. They never told you that. And that's a constructive banking lie. So do people get their money back? I do not know, but that would be the objective, that whatever's being paid into must be returned to you. And if you start this journey of unconstructing a trust, you must make sure that you break that trust, okay, not breach that trust, you break it because you no longer have faith in the executor, the judiciary, and the legislator. You must know, you must tell them that you are withdrawing from this trust because you was unaware, and that all your rights has to be returned back to you, and they are the settlers. They have to settle the account. They have to settle the lie. And that is how you dictate your terms and conditions in breaking these trusts. I would like to test people's knowledge here on the back of what I have said. Can somebody tell me what constructive treason is? Can somebody narrate for me what a constructive treason will look like?
For me, one of the biggest treason stories would be Guy Fawkes. So if we went along the story role of that man was lighting some fireworks in the park one night, and the landowner of the said building next to it, and let's say the policeman of the county, if them two come together and wrote to that man saying that you've lighted fireworks and you're not allowed to do that, that you owe us money for a fine, and he writes back and accepts that, they would then form a trust with him.
Absolutely. And the next story will be released in Parliament, that Guy Fawkes tried to blow up Parliament by setting off fireworks. And that would be a constructive trust. But more so, what would be a constructive treason? So
Oh,
treason,
sorry. So that's what I meant. So that's what the road I was going down. So instead of it just being the house that he was lighting the fireworks next to, they've lied and said that it was Parliament and he was trying to kill everyone in that Parliament when it was just a house, his house that he was lighting fireworks next to. Would that be
yeah,
correct?
correct, because House of Lords, House of Parliament, and his own house would match it. It's just a house that is lighting. That's all. So constructive treason, treason means three sons, three sons. Yeah, that's what treason means. Treason is another word for trust. It's got three people in it coming together to conspire to lie, to conspire to overthrow somebody in authority. That's within that trust, like, people trying to overthrow a king within the court system of that king, i.e., his own friends, all that would be constructive treason. And what you are witnessing with the Federal Reserve is also constructive treason. What you are witnessing with the medical associations is constructive treason against you. What you are witnessing with the mortgage companies, the courts, the governments, the legislators, the executives, is all constructive treason. All of it is constructive treason. And the British Museum and the Bank of England are some of the biggest players in the construction of these lies in order to practice and conduct treason against the people.
How big does their lie have to be before it's considered treason? Because there's lots of things that they do where, they charge us monies, and they cause stress upon people's lives, and sometimes even causing death in some situations with stress. How far does this lie have to go with these trusts before we can consider it treason?
I consider that a wonderful question. Putting aside any connotations of words and what it means in the forensics of the word, let us choose sovereign. The man and woman in any territory, whether it's England, whether it's the Americas, is the sovereign. Sovereign quite literally means the ability to conduct one's affairs, and they are free from any constructive contracts or trusts. They're not locked into anything. And if anybody, the governments, the courts, the mortgage companies, banks, museums, if they try to construct a treasonous contract amongst themselves to take your sovereignty away, because every man and woman is a sovereign, in its normal meaning of the word sovereign, as to oppose its forensics word or the passe word, that is treason. Treason is when you conspire to overthrow a sovereign. A sovereign is the people that live on the land, because they are the wealth of the nation. A monarch can never be a sovereign because it requires the people's permission. It is the people that give a monarch sovereignty. The monarch has no money of its own. That's why it's called a monarch. Monarch means one. Arch is another word. Arch means monarch. It's one arch. They require your permission. They require your commercial energy for them to be able to even exist. So in simple words, treason is when you construct to dethrone a sovereign, which is a man or a woman. It is not the crown. It is not a monarch. When they construct this treasonous, not act, but conduct, because that acting gives them immunity, is called actor's immunity. So it's not an act, it's they're actually doing it. When they conspire to take your crown, which is another word for coroner, which is another word for a crown, which is another word that sits like that character called the saint. All saints have a glow around their head, including Jesus. His one was, of course, a crown of thorns, but nevertheless, it was a crown. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to steal your birthright, the crown that you was born with when you was crowned by birth, which is when the baby's head begins to show. That's called a crown. Yeah, all these words mean one thing, and treason, constructive treason, is against the people, and it's not an act. If you call it an act, then they have acting immunity, because all actors have immunity, because they're only acting. You can't charge Arnold Schwarzenegger for murdering people on a film set, because it's only an act. By using this word, people rob themselves the ability to go after the people that actually did the harm. If you suffered loss, it can't be an act. It's for real. I think I would like to bring that to a full stop, if it's okay, unless you guys got some more exploratory questions.
Yes, Q. One question is, how can men and women know how many of these trusts are around them at any one time?
Okay, I will now give you a very simple example. Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. Did you sign a contract for that?
For the service, yes.
Yeah. So within that contract, it lists you and they write your name as a corporate entity. So they are providing a service for a corporation, a commercial rather than domestic. If you do not pay, they will pass your details on to a solicitor or a debt collecting agency. So if you don't perform for their benefit, they will now form behind your back a constructive trust, and they will write to you. And if you accept and reply back to their letters, they have successfully created and constructed a trust around you, and they will make you the settler of that trust, which means you created it by establishing and contracting and replying back to them and mitigating. Yeah. So that is one example. How many people have got memberships with gymnasiums, with credit cards, with bank accounts, with bus passes, with train passes, with yearly passes, with football game tickets? How many people have got contracts for voting? There are quite literally thousands of contracts that have been formed by constructive deception, what they call constructive trust. But the construction of it, as long as the people know, is a construction of a lie. Because which college do you know, which school do you know teaches what trusts are? And yet everything revolves around a trust. Which college, which one of you here has ever learned how a trust works? Can you go and get a degree on trust? If you're doing business, why don't they teach you what a trust is? You are purposely kept ignorant of what a trust is. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Gas bills, electricity bills, taxes, property taxes, they're all trusts in order to rob you of your ability to adjudicate, to be the executive and the administrator of your own affairs. In the world of fiction, and this might be very groundbreaking for people, in the world of fiction, 3 people make trust. In the world of fact, it's only 1.
So, Q,
Oh,
we used in these trusts, and we can see that it's got quite a negative field around it. Can it be used for your benefit? Are trusts completely bad, or can we use them in a better sense, like with the claims of life birth, and because they're still formed around a trust, are they not?
Yes, they are, but you are fully aware of that you are forming a trust. And as a result, you are able to administer your own affairs within that trust. But when people are not aware that they have walked themselves into a trust where they're the settlers or the victims of a trust, then of course it's all negative. The integrity of a test was best described to me by a simple television series on Amazon called Rings of Power, which was a recent production in the spirit of what the Lord of the Rings is. It's actually identical, but of course it was not written by the author. And in there they make it very clear, and they're educating people. They're saying the reason why you have to have a trust is for this reason. When you have one, it can corrupt like a corporate soul. It can corrupt. One thing having all power can corrupt it. Two, which is corporate, can divide. They can go part in their separate ways. So that breaks a trust. Three, however, like a triangle, balance each other. They keep integrity. So on the back of that, for our own, shall we say, benefit, we like to form trusts with each other because it's challenging to administer everything in our own lives. Like a baby, it has a father, it has a mother, and just in case things go wrong and to guide that baby through, you have what is known as a godfather. That forms a trust for the benefit of the baby. How wholesome, how beautiful, how clean is that?
Makes perfect sense. Thank you.